What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So ever since Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart got announced to have a PC port coming this summer, there were a lot of questions that came up around that PlayStation 5 solid-state drive and if it was actually required for that game to run. Well, we did get some system requirements revealed for that PC release and certainly caused quite a bit of controversy online yesterday. We'll go over that though here today. Also, we are going to be talking about that Microsoft Activision Blizzard situation with one more obstacle to clear for Microsoft today and how the whole thing got absolutely out of control. And we'll also be talking about The Last of Us that's apparently found its way to the Switch. At least I think it's Last of Us. It might also be The Last of Us we have at home. So if you guys enjoy these videos, make sure to hit that like button, helps out a ton. And if new here to the Spawnwave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And we're going to start today with EA Sports FC 24. This, of course, being the continuation of FIFA that EA has been putting out forever now, it feels like, but they had a bit of a falling out with the FIFA organization. They've gone their separate ways, and now we have the FC line of games for soccer or football from EA. But we did get a new trailer, which you can see here, and the release date. This coming out September 29th, of course, releasing PS5, PS4, Xbox Series X, S, Xbox One, PC, and Nintendo Switch. Previously, we've had the FIFA Legacy Edition over the last 3 or 4 years for the Switch. It's been a very poor outing for EA with that one. However, this is a bit different as the trailer not only shows Frostbite being used, which is, I mean, a big deal because that means it wouldn't just be a roster update for the Legacy Edition, but FIFA Ultimate Team, or I guess FC Ultimate Team, is now included. So we'll keep an eye on that Switch version, but it does look like it's gonna be a bit more than that Legacy, although I guess it's kind of hard to be worse than the Legacy editions that's been on that system at $40 to $50 for, yes, a roster update, but we'll keep an eye on this and see what reviews exactly say and tell us how much work EA really put into that Switch version. Also, Microsoft has announced a new voice reporting feature on the Xbox that is currently rolling out to insiders, and we can see this posted up over on the news.xbox page saying empowering players the option to capture and report inappropriate in-game voice chats. Essentially what's happening here is if you are in a lobby and there's a lot of stuff getting thrown around from the old days with something like Modern Warfare 2, those are wild rooms back then, you can actually record the voice that chats that's going on and send it to Microsoft for reporting, whereas back in the day, it was kind of like, take my word for it, yes, I lost to this person 50-0, but they were definitely harassing me, and that was a common thing, and it gets that person banned for like 24 hours without any kind of proof of anything happening. But in this instance, the voice recording will be deleted after 24 hours. You cannot edit it. It won't show up in your clips or anything like that. Obviously, they want it to be authentic and not tampered with in some way, but it's just a way for them to try to stop how the lobbies were back then, which again, some wild times. Oh, and we did get a release date for the Access controller from Sony on the PlayStation 5, this being their accessibility controller that'll go alongside of Xbox's adaptive controller, which is a good initiative for both companies to be doing right now, and we can see this over on PlayStation blog, saying Access controller for PS5 launches globally on December 6th. Pre-orders will start July 21st, this coming in at an MSRP of $89.99. You can see the image, of course, a controller that is set up to be highly customizable, as you would expect with these accessibility controllers. Microsoft with the adaptive controller is very similar, and you can basically shape and mold the controller any way you need to. And I do like seeing this from Sony and Microsoft, and I would like to see this from Nintendo as well. I think all major platform holders, at least the big three, should have these accessibility controllers ready to go, and I hope Nintendo does something similar here soon-ish or in the future. But yeah, good stuff here from Sony, and of course Microsoft with their adaptive controller. Look towards this Access controller later on this year in December, but you probably want to get a pre-order in July 21st if you are looking to pick one up. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. This will be releasing on PC in roughly 2 weeks, that being on July 26th. And as soon as that PC port was announced coming from Nix's, a lot of questions around that PS5 SSD because it was hyped up like crazy as being the big reason you could jump between realities and teleport around ultra fast. Well, We got the minimum system requirements, which you can see here, posted up with this large card. And it goes from minimum all the way up to ultimate ray tracing, which if you want to do that at 4K 60, you need a pretty top-of-the-line rig RTX 4080 or an RX 7900 XTX, i7 12700K or a Ryzen 9 5900X, 32 gigabytes of RAM, and yes, a 75 gigabyte SSD. So you will need an SSD at least for that, but if you go all the way down to the minimum, which I do want to point out the wide sweeping range of different GPU and CPU generations here with the GPU they have here for a minimum, which yes, 720p at 30 frames per second, but a GTX 960 or an RX 470. But then we get down to the storage, which by the way, also 8 gigabytes of RAM, so half of what's available in the PS5 for the minimum. Yeah, the storage is a 75 gigabyte hard disk drive, not a solid state drive. Yeah, it says SSD recommended, but apparently this game can indeed run off of an HDD. You don't need that SSD necessarily, but I am curious to see what some of these tests are going to look like with, someone's going to take like the oldest 5400 RPM Western Digital Blue drive, hook it up through like SATA 2 and see what happens. But I am curious how this will do on even a decent hard disk drive, like a 7200 RPM Barracuda or something, just to see what it can do there as opposed to a decent SSD. I envision it maybe stuttering a bit here and there, but yeah, I think it probably will run fine for the most part. What we saw with the PS5 SSD and specifically Ratchet and Clank was a lot of marketing and PR speak, a lot of hype, and people have pointed out one specific video where I believe a creative director at Insomniac really put over the PS5 SSD as making the entire thing possible, as in without that, it wouldn't be possible. So yeah, you catch those words and it's like, okay, how required is it really? Well, apparently we're going to find out because we'll see the benchmarks July 26th, and we will be taking a look at those here because I am genuinely interested to see what happens when you try to shift between realities with the hard disk drive as opposed to an SSD. Next up, let's talk about Microsoft, the Activision Blizzard situation with the FTC, as it looks like right now, Microsoft is indeed moving to close this thing probably over the weekend with the big press release dropping early Monday morning at start of business. But right now, the FTC is indeed still trying to run interference with one final roadblock that they're kind of Hail Mary right now. All right, so essentially what's going on currently is Microsoft is working things out with the CMA. There are talks specifically from Bloomberg that they may be selling the rights for kind of the streaming content in the UK, and that would basically alleviate the cloud gaming concerns that the CMA has thrown up in the UK. And as for the FTC, they're looking to extend the current stay that expires tonight at midnight. So Friday at midnight, after that expires, Microsoft is free and clear to close this thing with Activision Blizzard. But the FTC decided to go to Judge Corley, who did have the decision a few days ago with the FTC and their injunction they were trying to get being denied. So we can see this posted up by Stephen Totillo saying, no surprise, Judge Corley in the district court has denied this request, essentially extending that stay. And now the FTC is looking towards the Ninth Court of Appeals, Ninth Circuit Appeals Court, and what they're trying to do is get a much longer stay in place so that basically Microsoft cannot close this deal with Activision Blizzard. And I mentioned this was going to be moving very, very fast, and it really has. I've seen stuff pop up with documents being filed in like 2 or 3 hours. There's a decision or response from it. This is not typically how things function in what's a very drawn out legal system most times, especially with mergers of this size, but it really is getting down to like 0 hour right now. The clock is indeed ticking, and the FTC is looking to have some sort of decision from the Ninth Circuit today. And if there is no decision or it's denied, that's it. I think we will see Microsoft officially close, but of course, things had to get a bit out of control, and you can see this posted up by Tom Warren, who spotted that the FTC, their Wikipedia page, got a bit of an edit there. Yeah, that's the PlayStation logo. It's apparently the seal. You see a seal of Federal Trade Commission. That's the flag of the Federal Trade Commission. It's the PlayStation logo, which, yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny, but it's also just a Wikipedia entry that can be edited back and forth. So it came back down pretty quick. But I think a lot of that's just the play on, even in the decision at the court level with Judge Corley, it was being pointed out that it seemed the FTC was more interested in defending Sony than the consumer. But we'll see what happens today with the 9th District and the FTC and that decision. But ladies and gentlemen, we might finally be done after, what, a year and a half now of talking about the Microsoft Activision Blizzard acquisition. By next week, we might have the conclusion and Microsoft will finally own Activision, Call of Duty, King, Blizzard, the whole thing. So fingers crossed, we might be at the finish line. Next up, let's talk about a sale that is currently ongoing with Square Enix. And there are a ton of titles in here. And I looked around, it appears to be valid across all platforms. So I checked some of these on the Xbox, on the PlayStation, and on the Switch. And there's some pretty good discounts here. We're gonna take a look at Nintendo's sales and deals page because it's laid out very nicely so we can kind of scroll through a bunch of these here. And this is the Square Enix summer sale. It is live now and will run until July 26. Right off the bat, though, Octopath Traveler 2, that being 25% off. Nier Automata, End of Your Edition, 25%. Very good port, by the way, on the Switch. Balan Wonderworld, I mean, you can't beat this, guys. 80% off. It is $8 for Balan Wonderworld. I also have Chocobo GP, which, remember, that game had a bit of a transformation, and it's now an actual game and not necessarily the big live service thing that Square was trying to push for a while there. Bunch of Dragon Quest games marked down 35%, that being 1, 2, and 3. Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles Remastered, that's 60% off. You have all the Final Fantasies, 9, 7, 8, 10, 10-2, 12, 15 Pocket Edition HD on the Switch, all these being half off. I mean, seriously, you can get Final Fantasy VII for $8 or 10 and 10-2 at $25. So a lot of value there, especially if you're someone who's never really played these older Final Fantasy games. You can't really go wrong with any of them. Harvestella is 50% off, which I've looked at that here and there, and I've thought about getting it, but I'm actually still waiting for it to drop a bit further in price. You do have some of the cloud versions of Kingdom Hearts on the Switch, but on the other platforms as well. Those are marked down 50%. Neo, The World Ends With You, that's 50% off. Ononaki is 60% off. Saga Frontier Remastered at 50% off. Tactics Ogre Reborn, absolutely recommend that at 40% off. Trials of Mana, I was a big fan of that one. That's 50% off. You also have World of Final Fantasy Maxima, which is kind of a strange spin-off for Final Fantasy, but that being 60% off, not too bad, maybe worth a try there. Then you have some of the Life is Strange games, those being 50% off. But certainly some really good titles there that are on sale, some high-quality games, and take a look through and leave some recommendations down below for what people should be checking out. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about The Last of Us that somehow found its way to the Nintendo Switch. Now, I do want to give it a shout out because RGT told me about this a little while ago when he was putting his video together, and I looked at it, thought it was kind of funny, and I figured it would have been buried in the eShop completely, but word started to get around, and it's kind of turned into a bit of a meme now after Sean covered it on his channel, and I saw Digital Foundry covered it, so I thought we'd have a laugh here and take a look, and you can see this over on the Nintendo UK eShop. The Last Hope, Dead Zone Survival. Yeah, you can see where they drew some of their inspiration from. It's basically at $10 essentially there, and some of the features are storytelling and narrative. They have both of those here. Captivating plot, immersive graphics, engaging gameplay mechanics, unknown locations, challenging missions, variety of weapons, meaningful choices. We're just gonna steal some of Sean's footage here so you can see what it looks like. Go check out his video though. He did his best to hold it together for, I think, just over 8 minutes. But this is something, isn't it? It comes in at 2.5 gigabytes. It's from a company I've never heard of, but you know, I realized something with this. One, the eShop is still a disaster more than 6 years after it came out. I mean, Nintendo's done a few things to it. It's a terrible experience to browse, though. I mean, it's slow. There's no real organization when you go through recent releases or anything. And for the most part, the typical popular titles end up at the top of a lot of the recommended tabs anyway, so it's hard to find some of those hidden gems unless you go out looking for videos or write-ups or even recommendations on different forums for what to just seek out. It's kind of a shame that it hasn't seen massive improvements, but the curation is also very poor, and that's how you end up with The Last Hope. Although I guess it's not inherently a game that's like breaking the system or anything, it's just an obvious cash grab that's just super low quality. But maybe this is the move, because I'm sure with the exposure, people bought it just to kind of have a laugh, especially since it was on sale for $1 or $2 at one point. Maybe the move is to take games from other platforms, maybe they'll do a Ratchet and Clank one, and make it look terrible, and then sell it kind of as a meme and hope that it gets exposure through videos like these. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think, though, about the eShop now, 6 years after release. That's something I really hope that Nintendo has a long and hard look at and decides to do some serious shakeups for their next platform. Also, I might have to do a video just going through the eShop and showing just kind of the state of it and some of the just wild stuff that's on there right now. Let me know if you'd like to see a video like that. And before we go to the comment of the day, we're gonna take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I ask, if another big acquisition happens in gaming, which of these publishers do you think is most likely to be acquired? Wow, everyone, or at least 34%, think that Square Enix is ready to sell out right away. I think people look at Sony as being the main suitor for them. Sony just makes no sense to buy Square Enix. They already get everything they want from them at this point, and Square is kind of taking advantage of all three platform holders now. Sony helping them develop and even paying for marketing for Final Fantasy, Microsoft handing them Game Pass checks, and Nintendo working with them on the HD2D stuff. I'm a little surprised Capcom is last on that list, by the way, because there was a lot of talk about them being this close to actually signing over and selling Capcom, like the company, to, we'll say, another company just before Monster Hunter World came out. But that came out, set the world on fire, and then they really got things figured out with these remakes that they've been leaning into heavily, and it's completely turned things around for Capcom. But apparently it was that close for them. Sony and Square, though, doesn't make any sense to me. In fact, I just don't see why it would happen. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Bill saying, big shout out to MVG for being highlighted in Limited Run Games presentation. I appreciate the only thing they had to say about him was from Australia. Yeah, I don't know about that one, because if he's from Australia, explain this picture. It looks pretty authentic. I don't think you can Photoshop that, but now it was cool to see MVG being highlighted there with the carbon engine. He's put in a lot of work with that, and you're seeing it pay off in real time here with things like Tomba. It was so cool to see some of those storied franchises that, I'm gonna be honest, I remember fondly. Some of you remember fondly, but the newer generation really doesn't. And MVG with the carbon engine coming through, bringing some of these classics up to the new generation. It's exciting stuff. And ladies and gentlemen, that's gonna do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. Was Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, heading to PC in a couple of weeks, apparently with the ability to run off of a hard drive. How do you think those benchmarks are gonna go? And then also Microsoft, Activision, Blizzard, seems like this deal is about to get done, but do you think the FTC is gonna throw up that one last roadblock that sticks today? Thanks guys for watching. Have a great weekend. I'll see you back here Monday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern time for Newswave.